So we finished that routine, and then we started the bear. And the bear was the dinner routine. So at the point that we came in for this study, he didn't eat with the family. He hadn't eaten a family meal in forever. They didn't even try to ask him to eat a family meal because they knew it wasn't going to work. So, Mom typically made him a grilled cheese sandwich that he often ate on the computer in the living room while the family sat around the table eating, because that was, frankly, the only way to have a peaceful meal. For baseline purposes, I needed to say to Mom, well, got to see the problem, sit him down at the table, try to get him to eat. Here's what it looked like.
Not eating. Put the spoon in your hand.
He's saying not, no. Okay. And again, that would go on for as long as you tried to get him to eat. So, taking a look at this, again, some parental requests to eat foods that were being served for dinner time, as well as any sort of request or assistance regarding utensil use, right, which was not an area of skill for him. He'd engage in all kinds of problem behavior, many of them you saw. The other thing that he often would do would be to repeatedly ask for a preferred food item. So I have loads of videotape of him screaming and signing grilled cheese sandwich, grilled cheese sandwich, grilled cheese sandwich. He would escape eating those non-preferred food items, and then the secondary kind of reinforcer for this problem behavior was that kids got to eat, so they'd give him stuff that he liked, right? Because what parent is going to say, starve, right? So he won't eat anything. She's got to make him something. And usually, as I was packing up the camera and leaving the house, somebody was cooking a grilled cheese sandwich when I was there to collect data. Many of the same kinds of setting events for this routine, but also he had a real lack of experience eating independently. As you could see probably from the video, holding a spoon, using a spoon is going to be problematic given his physical disability. He also had a real long history of food refusal. This had been an issue pretty much since toddlerhood. He had never really eaten typical foods. He's 8, right? So we're talking about years of history around mealtime. Mom really wanted him to do what all moms want their kids to do at dinner time, eat the food that mom serves, because I don't want to make a different meal for everybody around the table. She also really wanted him answering questions, participating in dinner time conversation, sharing something about his school day, because language development is a bit of an issue for him too, right? Both being deaf and having autism, that's kind of a double whammy in terms of language and communication, and they really wanted to use mealtime as a time to work on conversation. If he engaged in these behaviors, they would praise him to death, and he would also get to choose a preferred dessert item and a preferred after-dinner activity, right, to reinforce. An alternative replacement behavior, mom was happy with him asking for a break, which would not mean he actually left the table. She would just give him a minute and stop making requests of him to basically give him a sense to kind of compose himself and get ready. Again, we never had to do that. He went straight here. That doesn't, in my clinical work, hasn't happened very often in my life, but it was really nice that it did. Kind of just sped things right along. So certainly a few more strategies for this routine. Again, lots of visual supports. We provided him with some adapted materials, adapted utensils, a plate that suctioned onto the table so it was very stable, and we bought what's called a trip-trap chair that would hold him quite stably. It's kind of like a high chair. It's got a footrest, and his family actually added straps to it too, because as you'll see in the video, motor skills are a big issue, and so they needed to sort of strap his feet down on the footrest because otherwise his legs would fly out, and he needed a strap around his chest because he had poor trunk control. So we did some of those kinds of things and got him nice and stable at the table as well. Limited snacks, particularly in the few hours before dinner. We wanted him coming to dinner hungry. And giving him some choice. So he would get preferred foods, right? And he could choose the preferred food, and he could choose the preferred activity that he would access after dinner. Before we actually started intervening with the mom at the dinner table, Alicia and I actually went into the home and did some one-on-one intervention work. If you're really interested in food refusal, come tomorrow morning because Lauren Binnendyke is talking all about treatment of food refusal. She's going to talk a lot more about this. I'm just going to give you the thumbnail sketch of what we did. Because of the long history, because of all kinds of stuff, we often find that we'll get better results and results more quickly if an interventionist comes in and teaches a set of common foods. And so we'd ask the mom, what are some common meal foods? And we had a list of 12 food items across meats that the family ate, vegetables, and then sort of the starch grain stuff, so rice, potatoes, pasta. And over the course of those 12 foods, over the course of 2 weeks, we used a technique called stimulus fading, so a tiny little slivery taste of a non-preferred food, and you accept that and you get a cheesy. Tiny sliver of food, cheesy. 2 tiny slivers of food, cheesy. 3 tiny slivers of food, cheesy. Slivers got slightly larger, 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 larger. Within 2 weeks, he was accepting all 12 of those foods in meal-sized portions. He actually gained about 4 to 5 pounds during those first 2 weeks. That's how much food we were getting into him. And so Alicia and I went in, one of us went in every single day and got him eating those foods. Once he was eating those foods, then we implemented at the dinner table with mom. And mom used a lot of positive contingency statements. Again, if you eat your dinner, then you get cheesies, computer, that kind of stuff. In terms of some things we had to teach Kieran to do, we needed to teach some utensil use, right? And Alicia and I did a lot of that while we were teaching him to eat those 12 foods. We worked on teaching him to engage in conversation and really kind of scaffolding dinner time conversation with the mom. So mom would ask some key questions and things to kind of get conversation going. And mom also wanted him to say thank you at the end of the meal as a way of excusing himself. It's kind of a nice, polite thing to do. So we needed to teach him to do that as well. If he ate food, he would be praised. At the end of the meal, if he'd eaten all his food, he gets his dessert item and his activity. If there were little tiny problem behaviors, little signs that maybe he was going to engage in some refusal, mom would redirect him back to that visual that we used and remind him, remember, you need to eat your dinner, blah, 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 to get your dessert. And if there were major problem behaviors, which again only happened during this one-on-one training, we used a technique that Lauren will be going into in depth tomorrow called escape extinction, and really we used a technique called non-removal of spoon. So Alicia and I, if we were presenting food and he did engage in problem behavior, we held the spoon until he accepted, right? So he learned fairly quickly that no amount of screaming, turning my head, the food will not go away, so it's kind of futile to bother. And really, again, I think twice we had to implement a non-removal of spoon because he just didn't engage in that level of refusal. We made it so easy for him by using itty-bitty, like you could barely see the taste on the spoon. He barely knew it was there. So we made it so easy for him to be successful and moved so slowly that we really didn't see much problem behavior at all. This was the visual support that he used at the dinner table. It was in a plastic sign holder and it's set right up by his dinner plate. So they would pray, he would eat with utensils, he would drink milk, which was actually a goal that mom inserted during those 2 weeks when Alicia and I were getting him to eat those 12 foods. She looked at us and she said, you know, he also hasn't had a drink of milk since he was an infant. You think you could get him to drink milk too? Yeah, bring me the glass. Why not? And he did. She'd bring him this big glass, and by the end of the study, I've got video of him. It's like he's bellied up to the bar. He grabs this glass, and he chugs it back, completely empties it, puts it back down. He's done. So, drinking milk, check. He needed to wipe his face. He needed to say thank you. Before the meal started, he was presented with options, and he would then fill in his choice items. That was typically what he would choose. Some cheesies and computer after dinner. And we put a little reminder down here for him. We were working on him, and as you're going to see in the video, lots of uncontrolled motor movement. So if he's got a fork in his hand, his neighbors need to kind of watch out. So we were really teaching him that after you take the bite, put the fork down on the table. So here they are during the intervention phase. We were never sure what elephant socks was all about. But you know, he is engaging in a conversation. Also note that that's the bear.
Socks? Elephant socks.
See, it's an awful lot of work for him to get food on that utensil and get it to his mouth. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Work down.
And Mom has learned if he doesn't comply, she just very calmly makes sure he does comply.
Thank you. Drink milk. Okay.
So he says computer,
Finished eating.
and she says when you're
Then
finished eating, then
computer.
you can.
Which spoon?
And Mom started doing this on her own. We didn't teach Mom to give utensil choices, but Mom figured, hey, if I give him a choice of utensil, he's way more likely to eat the food than if I just hand him a spoon and say, eat.
Good work.
Right, so some really nice things that started happening fairly quickly on. This is a clip during the maintenance phase, and I want to show you this not so much for the eating, although the eating is nice, but for the conversation. This is the first real conversation that this mom had with her son. He's 8. It's the first real conversation. He initiates it. He's talking about his upcoming birthday, which is on the 6th of the month, so you're going to see him talk about that. You're going to see him sign stand, which seems very out of context of the conversation. He's about to go in and have surgery to lengthen the tendons in his leg, and he thinks that he will be able to stand after this, so you're going to see that happen. So this is their first conversation. You'll also notice that Mom is giving more physical assistance around getting food on the utensils into his mouth, and what we learned really early on in this intervention for this routine was that it was simply too physically taxing for him to get an entire meal of food into his body. It could take an hour and a half, and his food was cold, simply because he has a pretty significant motor impairment. So you're going to see Mom giving him more help, but he's still eating the food.
Yes. Okay.
So there's the 6th, because his birthday's on the 6th.
How old?
So she wants to know how old he's
How
going to
old
be.
on your birthday? 6? No.
Not 6.
How old?
Well, let's try 7.
7? No.
How about 8?
8? Now you are 8. Yeah. Your birthday. How old will you be? 8 will be finished.
Must be 9 then.
9, yes. You think so big.
So Mom's birthday, he says, and watch her, she only signs
Mom's
birthday. No, Mom's birthday.
Birthday. Yeah.
Because Mom's birthday came up after his.
First Curtis's birthday, then Mom's birthday.
He wants a party. He's never had a party.
You want to have your friends come? Tell me their names only.
Picture, he says.
Bug.
She thinks he signed Bug. He
Yeah,
signed
you look like a
Picture.
bug.
And he's monitoring her. No, I'm not talking about
Picture?
bugs.
No, not taking a picture.
It's the first real conversation. It's the lengthiest conversation I think he's ever had in his life, right? Mom struggles to understand, and I think it's really important to remember Mom's doing a whole lot of work here. Mom's trying to remember all the strategies. She's trying to physically support him in eating. She's trying to decode his signing, and hold the conversation, right? So like when he says picture, he's thinking, I'm going to have a birthday party, you're going to take pictures. She thinks he means take a picture right now. That's why she said no, right? That's just about her brain is so busy trying to do all this other stuff, but still, right, check on the conversation.